Hello everyone, this is Dan Calloway again coming at you, and today I want to talk about one of my favorite subjects as usual, which is Linux, and talk about something that's new to Linux that's just recently come onto the scene, and I think it's a great thing. I think it's going to change the desktop as we know of Linux. And so let's get into it. Alright, so I am running Black Lab Enterprise Linux, which is a 64-bit Ubuntu. It's actually Kubuntu 1604 long-term service. It's called Black Lab Enterprise. I really like it. It's got a lot of possibilities. And I've got Snap installed on here. So let's get into Snap and exactly what Snap is. So let me pull up a document here I've got, and we'll go into the subject here. Snap basically is a squash file system that contains your app code. And what it does is it allows you to run a program that gets installed in a sandbox, basically, on the system. It doesn't get installed in the normal way that applications have in the past, and that's been one of the big hurdles in Linux for the desktop, and it's caused the Linux desktop to fall behind quite a bit. And that is because in the past, if you're a Linux user like I am, that's been around for 18, 19 years or longer using Linux, you know that there have been times when if you're running a Debian system and you want to install something that's a Red Hat package management file, or if you're running a Debian, or if you're running a Red Hat system and you want to install an application and you can't find the RPM for it, or you can't find the DEB file, the Debi file to install, you may have to go to a tar.gz, which means you have to unarchive the file and then you have to install the tarball. Or you may even have to take the original source code binary and you may have to compile and make the file, and it just becomes a hassle. And so unless you're a Linux geek like I am, and you can stay with it and get it installed, if you're just a typical user that's been used to Windows and you want to go to Linux, and you encounter something like that, you're probably not going to stay with it, and you're probably going to lose favor with Linux because it's just not user-friendly for the desktop. And so that's the problem. Snap takes care of that. What Snap does is it doesn't matter which distro you're running. You can go up, get a Snap, you can install it, and you don't even have to care where you install it. We'll get into that here in a minute. But anyway, let's get back to what is a Snap. As I said, it's that squash FS file system. It contains your app code. If you're a Snap developer, you will develop that code and upload your snaps to snapcraft.io so others can grab it. When you do that, there is a file in your Snap called a snap.yaml file. That's an extremely important file. It is contained within every Snap that you create. It contains actually the metadata. It's a read-only file system, and once installed, there's a writable area that gets installed there for you, so that you can use the Snap and be interactive with it. Snaps are self-contained. They're bundled with libraries and runtimes that are needed. You as a user don't have to worry about that. You just install the Snap and run it. But if you're a developer, you need to be aware that all your libraries and runtimes need to be contained within the Snap. It gets updated and reverted without affecting the rest of the system here. So if you update or refresh a Snap, then you don't have to worry about, is that going to affect other files within the system itself? And that's why you don't need to worry about where those get installed. And there is garbage collection. We'll talk about that here in a moment, because Snaps do take up space, so you don't want it to overwhelm your system. It's confined within the OS and other apps, so there's a security mechanism that's in place to prevent hacking of your Snap. There are policies that are run within the Snap itself that are controlled by the user and the OS defaults, and so you don't have to be concerned about that as well. When you install a Snap, it gets mounted in a particular place. Now in the past, you might have had to concern yourself, do I install my application in /user/bin? Do I install it in /user/sbin directory? Do I put it in the default home directory with a subdirectory of bin or a subdirectory of sbin? Where do I install that particular application? With snaps, you don't have to worry about that. All snaps get mounted at a directory called snap, and then the snap name is a subdirectory of that directory. And if there's a particular revision, then the revision is a subdirectory of the snap name directory. Okay. Once declared, all snaps have their commands run at the directory snap bin, and then snap name is a subdirectory of bin. And then if the app name is different from the snap name, then there's going to be a suffixed dot whatever. But if the app name is the same as the snap name, this particular app name suffix gets omitted. It's not required. All right, so that's how they get installed, and we'll look at installing one here in a moment. And then they're mounted as well at that location. All right, so let's look at setup files that get installed here when you install a snap. And so when you install a snap, there are certain setup files that get installed with that. And so these are the files that get installed here. So you've got a meta snap.yaml, which is your basic snap details. You've got a meta/hooks, which is the hooks that call for specific events in the snap. Then you've got a meta directory with a GUI subdirectory and an icon.svg file, which is the icon for the snap. And then you've got a meta/GUI/star.desktop, which is your desktop file for the snap as well. Now the snap.yaml file here is the basic metadata file that contains all the requirements for your snap. And like I said, all snaps must have this snap.yaml file. It looks something like this. Let me show you an example here. The simplest snap you can have, if you look at the snap.yaml file, either of a vim or more or cat, you're going to see that you're going to have a name, which is the simplest, and then version, which is 1.0. They can be more complicated, however, and most of them are. A snap may offer an application to run that particular snap. So you have the name, which is simple. This is an example. Version 1.0, and then it lists the application that runs as well, which is hello, and the command, which has been hello world. And so that's the hello world snap that we'll look at here in a moment that I will install here. Okay, so that's basically a rundown on what a snap is. Let's talk about the interfaces involved in snaps once they get installed. Let's go to full screen here so you can see this. In your snap, when you get it installed, you can have more than one snap interfacing with another one. So you can have snap A interfacing with snap B here. And then your interface can be anything. That can be, a camera, that can be a printer, whatever. What happens there is there's a plug in snap A that goes into the interface and then interfaces into a slot in snap B through this interface here. All right, so that's how snap A talks to snap B through this interface, is through the plug-in slot. All right, that's automatically done for you. You don't have to worry yourself about that. And so you just have to know that that's how they interact. There is a garbage collection process here, and that's done through basically the refreshes that are done in the snap. And this is one of the snap commands, by the way. So if you're running a snap and you want to refresh it, you can just simply run a sudo snap refresh command. And let's say you have Hello World installed, and it's in version 1.0.1. When you do a refresh, if 1.0.2, for instance, is available, then what's going to happen is through the refresh process, Hello World is going to get updated to 1.0.2. Here's the developer, by the way, and it's revision 29. And so every time you refresh Hello World or all the snaps, if there are updates to it, then they'll get installed into the system. Okay, so you may be wondering what happens, down the line if all of these snaps, which are taking up space, physical space, start to crowd the system and you start running out of space. Well, let's take a look at that. That's called garbage collection, and Snap has garbage collection. If you run a snap list command, let's grep for hello, you're going to see that Hello World 1.0.2 is currently installed through this revision that we have up here. All right. And so if you do a snap list all, okay, and grep for hello, you can see that you have both versions installed on the system initially. So you've got the original one that came installed when you install the snap, which is 1.0.1. But what happens is when it gets refreshed in 1.0.2, the original version gets disabled by default. All right, and it hangs around. The reason for that is that you may want to revert, and there's a revert command to go back to a previous snap version. Then it would cause this particular disabled version to become now enabled, and then the version that you currently had installed that got reverted would then become disabled. Okay, and so, but for the time being now, let's just assume that you refresh 1.0.1 of Hello World Snap, and now it becomes the new version 1.0.2. So let's say that down the road you refresh again, okay, and let's say a new version of Hello World Snap now becomes available, which is 1.0.3. Then what happens if you run a snap list again all and grep for hello? So what you see, what happens here is Hello World 1.0.2 now becomes disabled, okay, and then Hello World 1.0.3, which is now the revised version, gets installed as the enabled version, and then 1.0.1 actually gets dropped out, so it's gone. So if you notice on the list here that that particular version no longer exists, that's the garbage collection that takes place, okay? And so you don't have multiple copies that just keep hanging around. You have no more than two that ever hang around, which is the latest one you're running and the previous version that you just revised. All right, so that's good to know that you can do that with snaps. All right, now snaps are sandboxed in the system, so they don't interact directly with the system other than through commands that you run for the snap. If a snap crashes, then that particular snap crashes, but it doesn't take the rest of the system down. It doesn't impact directly the kernel, the Linux kernel for whatever Linux distro that you're running. Here I'm running Black Lab Enterprise with a particular kernel version. In fact, I can show you. I've got the terminal up now. If I run a uname A on that, you can see I'm running kernel version 4.10.0-33 generic. Okay. All right, so let me clear that out. And let's go back here. And so the other thing that the snap does is, in addition to providing the protection against the system if it crashes, sandboxing the snap also provides additional security for that snap and for the system. So if somebody gets into your system, they can't necessarily get to your snap. If they can't get into your snap because it's sandboxed, and so that adds additional security for your application, for your snap. So let's take a look at some things involved with snap here. So let me go ahead and show you what I have currently on my system. If I run a snap list, so do a sudo snap list, you can see that I've got the core, which is required when you install snap. You have to install the snapd, which is snap daemon. The core gets installed, and that's version 16-2.26.14. I'm at revision 2462, and it's provided by Canonical. That's going to be there all the time. That doesn't get deleted. If that gets deleted, then you lose your capability to run snaps. All right, but I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different snaps that I've already installed here on my system. All of these are sandboxed, okay? They run independent of one another unless they're interfaced with one another for some reason. Let me go down here to Dolphin on my system and show you what happens when you install a snap. So when you install the snap, it actually gets mounted on your system. Okay, so it gets mounted in what's called a loop device. So let me just choose one at random. Here are the command speed test, okay, wrapper. This means that I'm looking at the loop device that's mounted for my speed test snap, okay. If I were to remove the snap, then this loop device mounting gets removed as well, okay. So let me go ahead and minimize that. And that's important because it's taking up space, as I mentioned earlier. And so if you want to remove snaps, you can do that. There's a process for doing it. But let me show you what happens if, now that I've installed one called Speed Test, I want to demonstrate that one to you. What this particular snap does is it goes out, and instead of using a web browser in Java or Flash in order to perform what's called a speed test of your broadband connection, that gets actually performed in your terminal, okay? And so to run that, I would do a sudo, because I need sudo privileges in Ubuntu, and run the snap name itself and hit enter. And so that's going to go out. It's going to ping the system. Then it's going to actually perform the download tests from my system, which I'm running over wireless right now, and so it's going to be degraded. I have a 60 megabit per second committed internet rate, but it's going to be around 20 because it's going to be degraded because I'm testing it over wireless. And then it actually logs the download speed and then performs the upload test. So it's right now telling me over wireless I have a 15 megabit per second download speed. The ping is 50 milliseconds, which is great. And then it's going to give me an upload speed once it completes that test. And so it completed the upload test at 4 megabits per second. And so this is a great little snap, okay, that performs your speed test for you. All right, so let me look at the snap list again. And you can see that we still have the ones that I had earlier. Let's say that for some reason I wanted to remove, well, let me show you the whole list of commands first. In order to get that, if you do run a snap help, that's going to show you every command you can use in snap. So if you're installing a snap and you want to abort a pending change to it, you can do it that way. If you want to look at all the changes that the system has been made to the system from your snaps, you can run the changes command here. If you want to connect a plug to a slot, you can do that through the connect command. If you want to disconnect a plug from a slot, you can use the disconnect command. If you want to find available list of packages to install, you can do that as well. If you want to install a snap, you can use the install command. And there are many, many, many more. Okay, so let me clear the screen. And let's look at finding snaps that are available. So if I just run a basic sudo snap find, it's going to report back some of the snaps that it found. And one of them is called Nextcloud. One is called Heroku command line interface. So these are just the basic ones that it found. Now, if I want to find snaps by category, I can do a sudo snap find. And let's say I want to find some snaps, let's say related to games. Okay. So it's going to go out and it's going to look for the games category. Here's Mindtest. Okay. And it is a unofficial Mindtest build. If you look over here, there's one called the Dwarf World Simulator called Dwarf Fortress. That's a snap that you can install. And, you know, there's a lot of them. All right, so let's look at some more. Say sudo snap mathematics. Okay. It doesn't see any of those. Oh, sudo snap find mathematics. Sorry. It's going to look for mathematics related snaps. Okay, one of them is called function ty, function y. Okay, it's a 3D graph drawing with vivid and immediate results. Here's one called truth tables. If you install that one, you can use that for truth tables. It's a truth tables snap. Here's a GNOME calculator, and so you can install the GNOME calculator and use that as a snap, as opposed to installing a calculator if one doesn't come pre-installed in your system. All right, so that's the way you can find various snaps in your system. If you want to look at changes that have taken place since you've installed snaps, you can run the sudo snap changes command, and that shows you, for instance, I installed here on 8/28 at 17:33:39 Zulu, I installed a little watcher snap, and then at 17:44:07 Zulu time, which is UTC, by the way, if you're not familiar with Zulu terminology, I removed that snap, so I removed it from the system. Here I install the rsync snap, and then I install the server for Rocket Chat later on down the line. Okay, so these are all the changes that have taken place in the system. So let me go ahead. Let's look at installing the Hello World snap, show you how that looks like, what that process looks like. So you need sudo privileges. You need elevated privileges to run it. So run sudo or sudo snap install, and then the particular snap you want to install, Hello World. It's a small one, so it's not going to take very long. All right, and so it sets it up and installs it for you, and that's done. And so that's how easy it was to install that particular snap. Now, if I want to run it, all I need to do is type in the snap name, and it returns Hello World, which is what you want it to do. That's all that Hello World snap does, is it returns the Hello World in your standard output on the screen. Okay. Now let's say that if I want to look and see if I've got it installed for sure and it's on my list, I can do a sudo snap list again, and now you notice Hello World is installed. It's version 6.3. Okay. Let's see if there are any updates to it. So I want to do a sudo snap refresh, and then the snap name that I want to refresh. If I leave it out and just hit enter here, it's going to refresh all of them. But if, let's say, I just want to install, or refresh rather, Hello World, it's going to go out and see if there's an update to Hello World. And it says there are no updates currently available. All right. This is different from updates that are performed through sudo apt-get update or repo updates. This is live here. So anytime an update, or a snap rather, gets updated to snapcraft.io, if it's available, I can pull it down immediately. I don't have to wait till that particular snap gets sent to a repo on that particular distribution so that I can run it through the normal update process. I can actually go out and grab it right away, and that's the other nice feature about snaps is updates are simple. Now, if I want to update all of them or refresh them all, I can do a sudo snap refresh all, or just simply refresh, and that's going to come back and say that it has updated all my snaps. Okay, and so now if I run a listing again, so let me go back and just run the list. Now you can see that I do have the latest version of Hello World 6.3, and all my others are the previous versions that they were as well. All right, and so I don't have any new ones there. Okay. Okay, so this has been a video showing you basically what a snap is. One of the things I didn't show you is removing a snap. So let me do that real quick. So if I want to remove the Hello World, a snap that I just installed, I can do a sudo snap remove hello world. And it's going to go out and remove that snap. And now if I then go back and run another listing, you can see that hello world is gone. So hello world is gone. I don't have it anymore. Let me show you one other thing before I close the video out. I installed the notes snap because I wanted a way to write notes on the screen of things I think about and things I want to do or things I want to do later. I didn't have one available to me, and so I went ahead and installed that snap because I found it and decided to go ahead and do that. So let me run notes and show you what it looks like. All I do is type notes, and let me go to a full screen here. If I go to, oops, I've got the wrong one. Go to full screen, and note that it covers up the command line interface there, so I can type in my notes here. Let me minimize it back here again and bring it up, and then I can minimize my terminal, get it out of the way, and so now I've got my notes app out here on the desktop so that I can use it. If I want to create a new note, I can just hit the plus sign, new note, and just say this is a reminder. Okay, and then I hit enter, and so I've got my note there, and then I can close this note out altogether, and then I've got my notes later if I want to come back and bring up notes again. Then just open up the terminal. Let's clear the screen here. Notes brings it back, so there's my reminder for my previous note there. Okay, so let me go ahead and close this out, and now let me also show you that I told you that all snaps get mounted at snap subdirectory. So let me show you that by changing to snap, and there it is. Okay, if I do a listing of those, I can see that I have all of these snaps have their own subdirectory under the snap directory. Hello world, in map, even though I uninstall this, okay, it's still there, and so that's part of the garbage collection. That'll get rid of that later. Snapcraft speed test is there as well. So all right, so let me go ahead and exit out of the system here and close out the video. So this has been a video to demonstrate Snap, which is a new way to install packages in Linux. Makes it much easier to do and makes it much more secure, and also allows it not to interface directly with the system, and so that you can then not have to worry about crashes that might take place. So thank you for watching.